Hi there, welcome to Gaining Vision. I'm Melanie. Thanks so much for clicking. To my returning family, the visionaries, welcome. Thank you so much for continuous love and support. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please feel at home. If you'd like to join the family and become a visionary too, somebody with insight and vision, hit that subscribe button. And please don't forget to like and share. Now we know that there's a lot going on in South Africa on the topic of politics in preparations for the elections next year. The EFF has been very busy hitting the ground running, holding people's consultations. They talked about this from the very beginning, that they wanted to hear from the people what was important to them, what needed to change, so they could create a people's manifesto for 2024 in preparation for them winning the election. I was able to watch one of these such events for young professionals held in Hoogten. It was an amazing event, and I was so inspired. It was different.
On behalf of the leadership, you are all welcome to our 2024 People's Manifesto consultation for professionals. All right. And I'd really like to apologize for the time that we are starting in. We are right at the center of Johannesburg, and a lot of people struggled to make it here. And but we are starting, and it's really about you today. We always talking and talking and talking. Today we do not want to talk. Hence the song that I sang about Tulumamele. It's a song directed at ourselves. We want to listen to yourselves in the process of constituting a sound, intelligible people's manifesto. We want to listen to your aspirations, the challenges, your proposals. And please feel very free.
The People's Manifesto. The Economic Freedom Fighters was formed and founded on the 26th of July 2013. We have remained true to our mission of economic freedom in our lifetime, and therefore in our understanding of achieving a government of ideological perspective of Fanon-Leninism and Marxism, we have to contest political power through elections. In this understanding, as an organization that remains true to consultation, we would like to take the opportunity on behalf of all here to engage on the ideals that should speak to the aspirations and the process that will be of a people's government under the EFF in 2024. Deputy President, before you are professionals who are dedicated, who understood and learned when the President of the country stood up to say that South Africa must rise and stand up during our 10th anniversary celebration, and took up the baton to say that they would form part of the process and the ideals of the economic freedom fighters and thoroughly contribute towards a government of the EFF as we take over government in 2024. The EFF, since its inception till now, has received over 1 million votes. Nationally, in Gauteng, we're standing at over 630,000. We are in government in at least 3 of these municipalities in Gauteng, and we require professionals to to participate a lot in terms of how we operate at a governance level as a political party. And would like to thank you all for being here, for being part of this process of consultation, because the work that we do has a dire influence in terms of what we seek to achieve and requires you as professionals to form part of us and give the necessary contributions towards an effective government that can deliver economic freedom in our lifetime. So you are all welcome, and thank you, Deputy President, for coming to listen to professionals in Gauteng and in the city of Johannesburg in particular. Thank you very much.
Different than the regular EFF events where the EFF would have a lot of people speaking. In this time, they did a lot of listening. They listened to the people. Now, there was so many different groups of individuals from different sectors: healthcare, engineering, lawyers, computer technology, social development, and education. Oh, of course, banking, of course. There's so many there. I had to keep them all track. But they had people speak their minds, their concerns, their thoughts, their ideas and solutions.
Yeah, my name is Dan Forowode. Yeah, you know, I was involved in finance, in healthcare administration. I'm an attorney, etc., etc. So I've covered quite a few areas in my life. And standing here, it feels like 20, 30 years ago, you know, we used to have meetings like this, and people used to say the same thing that is being said here today. And we haven't made progress. The question I have in my mind is, have we learned anything? Have these new organizations, and I'm not taking a dip at you guys who are forming organizations of engineers and this and that, but have you learned anything? Mzwanele will know what I'm talking about. Have you learned anything? Unfortunately, political parties can only do so much. When AfriForum says we are opposing this bill, transformation bill, how many of you go and challenge AfriForum? All of you are waiting for the political parties to do it, and they will never do it. And the reason why they will not do it is not because they don't want to. It's because we operate, or political parties operate, in a contested space. Okay. And I know this is what the DP is probably going to be talking about. I'm sorry. So I just thought I should touch on some of these things. But you see, when I was at Fort Hare, many years ago, we had a mass meeting. And somebody said, you know, we must go and ban that Coca-Cola truck when it comes here. And some clever students stood up and said, you know what? You cannot buy what is not sold. And everybody was confused. And the point he was making was simple. We don't have to worry about banning the truck if we are not going to buy the Coca-Cola product. So as students, let's agree that we're not going to buy that product. So the truck will not come because the products will still be in the shelf. Now, why am I saying this? And by the way, I want to say congratulations to the leadership of the EFF for the work they've done and keeping the organization the way they've done. But in my analysis, there's something else that has kept the EFF the way it is, coherent, strong, and growing. It's their position on race. The fact that we have all black people here. We're all black and African. But wait until you have non-Africans coming here. You'll see what will happen to the EFF. It will begin to disintegrate. This is what's happening in the ANC. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying this because this is what is happening in South Africa. The reason why the state is being broken into pieces and you don't have transformation is because if we have transformation of the economy and we have money, then we can control politics. And for us not to control politics, you frustrate economic transformation. Now, I'm sorry, I'm just throwing this. Now, oh, by the way, hey, you know, anyway, very quickly on the points that I wanted to make. By the way, I don't think NHI can work. I don't think so. We can have any discussion some other day. I don't think it can work. You know, so, but I think what we must do is, and just quickly, my leader, just to indulge you on the points I was making. When the EFF leadership was being attacked on VBS, how many of us stood up? And I'll tell you why we needed to stand up. It was because the reason for killing, by the way, VBS was killed by the Reserve Bank. And nobody was held accountable at the Reserve Bank. And we're happy to keep quiet. But they were killing it because they want to kill the idea of banks that compete with this. Anyway, so very quickly, I think as a suggestion on the land question, I'm going to the land question now. We have agreed on expropriation without compensation, but we must work on the logistics on how to implement it. Some of us have got ideas on how that should be done. The rest we'll talk some other time. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yes. That was.
And you could see the EFF members being very, very busy writing down lots of notes, including the deputy president. He was there, listening very attentively, making sure he was capturing everything. Now, of course, There were so many people there that they asked for people to also send submissions in case they missed anything. It was so nice to hear people on the ground and their concerns, what they were concerned about, what's going to happen, asking questions, but really just sharing solutions, what they want to see happen if EFF gets into power. Some of them were things I didn't even consider. And let's take a listen to a few of those now.
Thank you. Dumelang. My name is Dr. Larato Mahakwe. I am a specialist to be at the University of the Witwatersrand, specializing in internal medicine. So I have experience in public and private healthcare. We are overworked and underpaid. I, on a normal day, get to work at 6 o'clock, hoping to leave before 4, hoping that when I ask for help, someone is there to help me help someone else. So we are working in limited resources hospitals, even though they are tertiary institutions. As a specialist to be, I'm rotating in the 3 big hospitals in Johannesburg, one of them being one of the biggest hospitals in the African continent. But I'm still frustrated. I'm emotionally not encouraged to wake up and go to work. I see my people dying because there's not enough of me, not enough of us sitting on this table. So as healthcare professionals, we need support from government to increase capacity in all forms. From management, the people managing hospitals have to be people who are experienced. It's so frustrating for someone to tell you that you need to push the line when they haven't pushed the line themselves, when they don't know how it feels like for a patient as a black doctor to come and tell me or address me as sister when I've been on my feet for 36 hours. It's those small frustrations that are not encouraging in the system. In academic spaces, as a black person, you need to work 10 times harder than other races. So that discourages us a lot of black professionals to specialize, and we end up not having specialists that are able to talk our languages, that are able to understand our backgrounds and to correlate that into managing our patients. I think I'll leave the rest of the challenges to other healthcare professionals.
I go by the name of Prince Mtombeni, when it's full as Princess. I represent a not so popular industry, nuclear industry. I'm a professional in the nuclear industry. I am also a member of the Economic Intervention Forum of South Africa, but most relevant, I am the founder of Africa for Nuclear, which is an advocacy campaign that promotes nuclear as a key contributor to achieving Africa's agenda for sustainable development. I'm here basically not to speak about the internal problems of the industry, but also to just rally the support of the EFF and the South Africans at large when it comes to our industry, which is mostly attacked, basically just for existing and not doing anything. I would start by talking about the Integrated Resource Plan 2019. What is reflected in that plan is that about 21 gigawatt of coal power plants need to be decommissioned. And but if you look at the IRP, it does not really say what base load source is going to replace those coal power plants. And I'd like to propose that the EFF considers small modular reactors as a replacement for those coal power stations, so that we retain the workforce. We don't lose the number of workers and leave Mpumalanga as ghost towns. Another thing, I would like also to basically ask EFF to help us advocate for the current 2,500 megawatt of nuclear capacity that is in the IRP. To basically just accelerate the procurement process, because everything has been done. All that is needed is to issue out the request for proposals by the government. So please, let's advocate for the acceleration of the procurement process. I'd like also to ask for the support of going back to the IRP 2010, which had 9.6 gigawatt of nuclear. Because 2,500 is really small if you take into consideration the 21 gigawatt that needs to be decommissioned, if really it gets decommissioned post-2030.
I'm taking those people of commerce. Kaya, address us.
Thank you
Thanks.
and good evening. I am an accountant. So just one key comment from me. I think one of the more important observations over the past 10 to 15 years is what we refer to as the displacement of the state as a central player in the economy. And the displacement has happened quite subtly, and that a lot of people have not observed it. But one key manifestation of it is how the state has become quite reliant on third-party and external service providers to deliver core services. And the fundamental problem of that is that obviously what it does is that, I think one of my colleagues mentioned it earlier on, is that you are essentially seeing a more incapable state developing. And why that's particularly problematic is that a development state cannot afford to have the internal capacity to run its own developmental mandate. And I think that is South Africa's fundamental problem, the displacement of the state. What we're also seeing is that when the state does get displaced, what you then do is you open an opportunity for third-party and private sector players to capitalize in the resources and the services that the state should be delivering on its own. Now, the problem with that is that because so many people do not have the capacity or the economic opportunities to participate in those private sector initiatives, you actually end up with a society that is excluded from many things that they should be participating in. So whether you're looking at the prevalence of the private security industry, which is a reflection of the state's incapacity to secure its own citizens, whether you're looking at the prevalence of private schools or private universities, which is a response to the state's own incapacity to run those affairs, you do actually have a crisis, because in the long run, it would simply mean that there's a much smaller fraction of citizens that can actually participate in those developmental endeavors, whether it's education, whether it's health and security, and that's a fundamental issue. The secondary point that I was hoping would be a big part of this conversation is that when you try to craft a manifesto and you talk about the local government and national government and all of those, it's become very clear that one of the big deliberation points should be the simple question of whether the state in its current configuration is appropriate when you look at the skill set that exists in the state. So one of the key problems that we have every single year is that South Africa has decided that it wants to have 257 different municipalities across the system. What South Africa doesn't want to acknowledge is that it doesn't have 257 fully capacitated municipalities. Why that is a problem is that for citizens who are not in this room, their primary interaction with the state happens at the primary level. It happens at a clinic rather than a tertiary hospital. It happens at a school rather than a university. So if you do not build the capacity at the grassroots level, at the primary interaction point, it simply means that citizens actually do not get to participate in what the state should be doing in order to develop them. And I think that is the one thing that we're hoping that if there's going to be a change or a reorientation in government, that is something that must be tackled. I think the closest you came to it is when you championed the insourcing that we saw after 2016 in Johannesburg. And what we were hoping was that was going to be the way things are done, but it hasn't actually become a universal charge to say that the state cannot afford to outsource its core functions. The state that is developmental in nature cannot afford to rely on third-party private sector providers in order to create capacity, because we now know, as it was said earlier on quite articulately, is that consultants walk in on day one, they leave the day after, and the next day you need them because it was never their responsibility to build state capacity, and that is what elected politicians are supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I really appreciated about this event and about EFF keeping their word is they are having their finger on the pulse of the people that are going to be voting. They really want to hear from South Africans on what is happening, what their concerns are, and how they can best address this. They've said that they're creating a people's manifesto. And what's great about this is the people that attended this event will be able to hold them to account if in fact they don't do it, and if they don't follow through on making the resolutions that they're asking for. I think it's important for many political parties to have this transparency, to have their finger on the pulse, and to connect with the people. EFF is showing them how it's done. And I know they're going to be holding many, many more of these consultations. And if you're in South Africa, I encourage you to attend them, because that way you have your say. Whether it's EFF or another political party, any way that you can get your thoughts and concerns out, please reach out to them. Have your say. It's important that people in the political spectrum hear the concerns, ideas, and solutions from you. I'll be watching carefully for other consultations just like this, because I really want to see how it all comes together. The Deputy President said a few words at the end, and I want us to take a listen to his speech, because I thought this was very uplifting, a great way to end an exceptional night.
Amandla, Amandla, viva EFF, viva, viva EFF, viva, uza 2024, uza 2024, uza, siaya Pitori, siaya, Amandla, away two. No, thank you very much, Commissar Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who is the Provincial Elections Task Force convener here in the province of Gauteng. Commissar Lien is the coordinator, the former national chair, the public protector, the president of the Black Business Council, the commissars, and most importantly, all of us as professionals who have gathered here today to give what I think was a very informative and empowering input into what should constitute the manifesto, the People's Manifesto of the EFF. I think it actually even goes beyond that. It is beginning to be a government in waiting program of action. I think we should give ourselves a round of applause that the extent and the depth and the width of what was submitted here today is inspiring of ourselves as a generation, but also as Black people, that amongst and within ourselves we've got the necessary knowledge and capacity to could define a different discourse, starting from 2024 moving forward, because definitely we're going to be government at national level from 2024 onwards. So we really appreciate like in my other responsibilities, in my other academic pursuits, I intrinsically studied the negotiations and the deliberations that took place, particularly on economic policy, prior to 1994. And I can say, not because I'm trying to flatter you here, that the depth here is far much more deeper and far much more solid than what those who were deliberating before 1994 were doing, when they were doing Ready to Govern. And you can still have access to some of the deliberations. They were too shallow in terms of just what had to be done. What we got to listen to today inspires confidence. It gives us hope that we are going somewhere as a movement, as an economic liberation movement. And just to give context is that we obviously came here to listen. And we have heard you deeply, we've recorded. So some of the issues that we couldn't capture correctly, we're going to further listen. And as part of this process of drafting and finalizing the People's Manifesto, we are going to be consulting different sectors. We have already issued out a communique as to where we're going to meet which sectors in different provinces. But we're also going to have seminars. So we're going to have a seminar on jobs on the 29th of September, 29th of October, where we're going to be focusing on jobs, like what do we do to create a labor-absorptive economy and society. That is going to, so we're going to have a seminar. It's going to be far much more substantial. It will not just be a consultative forum like this. It will be a day-long conference with expert presentations, deliberations, and an outcome that is going to, we're going to also have a seminar that is going to focus on the creative industry. So the issue of arts and culture national chair will be dealt with in detail in that seminar, which is going to focus as to what do we leverage out of the creative industry. And we're going to have a dedicated seminar on electricity as well. There was a very profound input as to just how do we derive maximum electricity from uranium to nuclear and all these other aspects that we're looking into. We're going to have also a seminar on public safety, and that will be a dedicated one so that we come out with a clear program. So what will be the culmination of this process will be a ready to govern program of action. We're not just drafting commitments, we're not drafting wishes. We're drafting a program of action that when we take over government, will then be able to move into action. And of course, so in this manifesto drafting committee, which has been established by the Central Election Task Force, we've got currently 30 commissars and fighters and experts who are going to be looking into different sectors. And I agree with the submission that within the manifesto drafting committee, we should have sectoral working groups. So, because Dr. Tlaling is already part of the manifesto drafting committee, she should constitute the working group on health to consolidate all the otherwise very profound perspectives that came on health. Then we must have the working group on land, we'll have the working group on electricity, we'll have the working group on ICT, we'll have the working group on different sectors that are of relevance, on the financial services sector as well, in terms of how do we transform that. But there's an issue which we have been raising, particularly with Black Business Council, president of the Black Business Council, that in the legislative sector now, in parliament and provincial legislatures, whenever there's a lawmaking process, organized business or organized black business and professionals do not say anything. If they do, in many instances, they speak contradictory and sometimes humiliating submissions come. We'll give you many examples when we're finalizing, we're dealing with the insurance bill in Parliament. Different insurance companies, black companies and organizations came to speak contradictory inputs as to what should be the contents of that insurance bill. And we said to Black Business Council when they came to Winnie Madikizela Mandela House for the bilateral that Black Business Council must consolidate the progressive perspectives. We even went to the extent of saying we will avail offices in Cape Town to have the BBC with a full-time parliamentary liaison officer. Say that on all legislations, because the BBC has got these affiliate organizations, Black Management Forum, I assume Kaya that APSIP is part of BBC as well. So all these other organizations, whenever there is legislation that is sectorally relevant, we should be able to give the necessary input all the time. So the unions have got, COSATU has got a permanent person in Parliament there. Whenever there's legislation, whether it's the text amendment laws or these financial legislations, they perpetually give input. We would think that the progressive voices must consolidate and give consistent inputs whenever we're dealing with legislations, not just for purposes of elections now, or not just for purposes of drafting legislation. Even perpetually when we're government, we will seek to be engaged with practitioners as to what is your interpretation and how do you approach certain things. Like we've got, different views on the national health insurance. We need to know what are the real experiences of practitioners in the sector. How is it going to be rolled out? Is it not just going to be the national health insurance distributing the 400 billion which is set aside to white privately owned healthcare institutions? because in the current framework, the National Health Insurance is just going to be distributing money to privately owned health institutions. And the manner in which it is designed, it is such that these privately owned healthcare institutions are going to go door to door fundraising diseases so that they can claim more money. That is what it's going to be like. And we have to then have a different framework as to how do we have a different approach. And I hear the input of the colleague who spoke about nuclear, a very profound input, and said that we should issue out a request for proposal for those who are going to come with nuclear as a source of electricity. So as an update, as part of our government responsibilities now in the city of Ekurhuleni, we issued out an RFP for base load and dispatchable energy, where we said that those who can, they must come with proposals, because now cities are allowed to source their own electricity. So we've got a framework which will culminate in a BOT kind of arrangement where build, operate, and later on transfer to the control of the state, where if you can provide base load electricity, and uniquely what we are doing through the city of Ekurhuleni, we are sourcing base load electricity, not these ones of wind and the sun, because there's not yet proper science that you can successfully harvest the wind and the sun to provide dependable base load electricity. It can happen, particularly for dependability of such. So in terms of what we're dealing with in Ekurhuleni, but that process is closed. I understand, MMC of Finance, that you are in the process of evaluation, and you will ultimately adjudicate in terms of that. But for those who are role players in the sector, so in eThekwini, it is still out in we have got an emergency procurement process for electricity as well, which is happening in the department which we oversee in the city of Ekurhuleni. And I know because our members of the mayoral committee in Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, they always give us update and heads up of what is going to happen. That the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality as well will be issuing out a request for proposal on electricity as to just what do we do. So we are candidate in all the departments which were leading as the EFF to be the first ones to could effectively end load sheddings in the cities that were leading as the EFF with a clear program. So we're not speaking rhetoric about the solutions that we can bring to the fore in terms of the stabilization of energy source, of energy provision, because that is what we specialize in. We've really heard all of you, and I was taking a lot of notes here that in the framework which we're working on, there were certain aspects which were not going to be chapters in the manifesto of the EFF, but after this consultation, we are going to have those dedicated chapters and then dedicated focus on all the issues that you have brought to our attention. And then it was quite a useful thing. And then lastly, because here we're just listening, Komisambi saying, it's an invitation to all of you as professionals and as activists. I think some of you must discuss amongst yourselves to say, come to the fore, let's go to Pretoria, let's go to Cape Town. Because next year we're going to be leading this government. Let some of you voluntarily come to participate with insight and depth of understanding of the sectors that you operate in. So that when we assume the responsibility of Minister of Health, Minister of Finance, Minister of all these other responsibilities, we operate with people who are from the industry, are practitioners, understand deeply just what is happening in their sectors. And this is a genuine and legitimate invitation that let's get closer to the movement, and let's do it sooner so that all of us, our ground forces, do not have the temptation that they came very late. So the sooner we come closer to the movement, the better. We coordinate the campaigns, we do the work, and then we strategically deploy each other to meaningful responsibilities with proper understanding of the sectors that we're operating in. Because one thing that we've got to discover is that despite the fact that the ruling party now is inclined towards collaborationist and selling out positions, part of our problems in South Africa is the knowledgelessness of the employees in parliament and in government. There are so many issues which could be handled differently, but these people do not know what to do. There are so many issues. Like we gave an illustration when we got to Parliament in 2014 that you have a situation where the country is losing hundreds of billions through aggressive tax avoidance, illicit financial flows, and tax-based erosion broadly. But none of those people were aware of what that phenomenon is. And you're busy losing billions of rands, like of potential revenue, which can be utilized to empower people to give health care, to give fee-free quality education to our people. So we do not want to ascend to power with knowledgelessness. We want to ascend to power with a firm foundation of knowing just what is to be done. That is what is going to define an EFF government. And we're giving an invitation to you, so wherever you are, let's approach the branches of the EFF, let's approach the leaders to say, we want to begin to participate now, so that we provide meaningful leadership to our people. We must provide quality leadership to our people. We can't replace a tendency of mediocrity of the ANC with another mediocrity. It has to be quality, alternate leadership that inspires confidence, that knows what it is assigned to do. And that is what should be applicable to all of us. Otherwise, we really appreciate, and we really deeply appreciate all the inputs that you have made here. There are platforms which we have created, the email, WhatsApp, and even Telegram channel, where if there's further inputs that you want to make, you can always make those submissions, and we'll always consider all of the submissions that you're going to be giving to all of us. Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of this session. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
What are your thoughts about this? How do you feel it is done? Was it done tastefully? Did they hear everybody that they could have? I encourage you to watch the entire video. It is 3 hours in length, I'll warn you, but worth every minute, because I learned so much, I educated myself, but also I was really glad to hear the EFF listening and also inspiring them to people, the tenants, to get involved, to help out with the working groups, and definitely not to shy away, to step up and help out wherever necessary. Because obviously with people, especially young professionals, being able to take on roles that will help make a difference in their own communities, this is going to help South Africa grow. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. Drop them in the comments below, and please don't forget to hit the notification button. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.